As Jason's hand shakily reached for the doorknob, he would never forget the panic in his 70-year-old neighbor, Mr. Peterson's voice. "Don't open that door, son. Some secrets are meant to stay buried." But Jason knew it was too late. What he saw in that shelter during the tornado would reveal a truth no one in this small Kansas town could have imagined. 2 days ago, everything had started normally. Jason Williams and his family were eating dinner when the television weatherman Jim Morrison issued a warning in his typical Kansas drawl. "Folks, a serious storm is coming tonight. A tornado watch has been initiated. Find safety inside or go to the nearest shelter." Jason, 23, had moved to this small town with his father, Tom, and mother, Linda, in 2019. After graduating from college, Jason had started working for his father's construction company. The town was quiet, the people friendly, a typical Midwestern lifestyle. Even the nearest big city, Wichita, was 2 hours away. "Mom, you talk like you've forgotten where we live," Jason said with a laugh. "We're in Kansas. Tornadoes are as routine as Monday morning coffee for us." Linda glanced nervously at the television. "Jason, do you hear that siren? It's different this time. The weatherman says extremely dangerous." Sure enough, the sirens were growing louder outside. Tom stood up and looked out his window. The sky had taken on a strange greenish hue, a typical sign of a tornado. "Shit," Tom said. "Our shelter is still under renovation. Linda, gather the kids. We're going to the Peterson house." Harold Peterson was an elderly man who lived in the house to the family's left. He'd lived here since 1953, alone and quiet. They'd only spoken to him a few times, at a "good morning" level, since Jason's family moved in. The man had always been a bit distant, but Jason took that as typical old-timey behavior. As the wind picked up, the family quickly knocked on Peterson's door. When the old man opened the door, he had a worried expression on his face. "Mr. Peterson, can we use your shelter? Ours is under renovation, and—" Before Tom could finish his sentence, the old man nodded. Sure, come on. Hurry up." Peterson led them to the back of the house, past the kitchen, to a small door. Metal stairs led down to the ground. The Jason family shelter was modern and practical, but Peterson's was much older. Concrete walls, a low ceiling, an old radio in the corner. "I had it built in 1952, Peterson said, leading them downstairs. "Everyone had a place like this back then." As they descended, Jason looked around. The shelter was about 10 feet by 12 feet. There were old canned goods in one corner, blankets in the other. But what caught Jason's eye was a strange section of wall. It looked like part of it had been built later. The wind outside was growing louder. The tornado was approaching. "How long does it usually last?" Linda asked. "It will pass," Peterson said shortly. He turned on the old radio. Through the static, emergency broadcasts could be heard. "EF3 tornado confirmed. Take immediate shelter." Jason was still staring at that strange section of wall. While the other walls were made of plain concrete block, this section appeared to be made of a different material, and there seemed to be a gaping hole behind it. "Mr. Peterson," Jason said curiously. "That wall, it looks like there's something behind it." The old man's face changed suddenly. No, nothing like that. Just old concrete." "But I caught the details. There was a thin line in the edge of the wall, shaped like a door. And, interestingly, a slight draft of air was coming from that part. The tornado outside escalated into a terrifying roar. It sounded like a giant train passing over the house." Everyone waited silently. "Jason, don't look at that wall," Peterson said harshly. "But Mr. Peterson, it looks like there's a door." "There's no door." Peterson's sudden shout surprised everyone. The old man was out of breath. "I'm sorry." I'm under a lot of stress." Tom and Linda said nothing, but Jason noted Peterson's overreaction. Why had he become so tense? The tornado lasted about 45 minutes. Finally, the noise outside faded and the sirens stopped. "I think it's over," Tom said. Peterson quickly stood up. "Yeah, we can go now. Come on, go up." Jason took one last look at that wall. As the angle of the light changed, he could see the space behind it more clearly. And he noticed something else, a small piece of metal on the floor at the bottom of the wall, as if a lock had once been there. The next morning, Jason couldn't get the situation out of his head. Peterson's reaction was very strange, and that wall was indeed suspicious. He brought it up with his family over dinner. "Dad, don't you think Peterson was acting very strange last night?" Tom shrugged. "The man is old, Jason. Everyone reacts differently under tornado stress. But that wall was really different. It looked like there was a room behind it." Linda laughed. "Honey, maybe an old storage room or something. Houses were built differently in the 1950s. But Jason wasn't convinced. That night, he started searching online. He typed 1950s Kansas storm shelters into Google. The results were interesting. During the Cold War, especially between 1950 and 1955, many Americans had built fallout shelters in their homes. The deeper he delved, the more interesting information he found. In Kansas, especially in rural areas, some homes were used by the government as safe houses. During the Cold War, safe houses were used for defectors, spies, or scientists fleeing the Soviets. "Holy shit," Jason muttered. Was that even possible? The next day, when no one was at the Peterson house, the old man went shopping downtown every Wednesday afternoon. Jason went into the backyard. He looked at the outer entrance to the bunker. The metal cover was securely locked, but Jason examined the surrounding soil. Surprisingly, at the back of the house, about 10 feet from the bunker, there was a slight depression in the ground. It looked as if there had been an entrance there years ago, but it had been blocked off. Jason pulled out his phone and took a photo. Then he went to the town library. In small Kansas towns, libraries are often repositories of local history. Mrs. Betty Hammond, the 65-year-old librarian, knew Jason. "Dear Jason, how can I help you?" "Mrs. Hammond, I'm looking for information about this town in the 1950s. I'm particularly curious about the Peterson house." Betty's eyes lit up. "Oh, Harold Peterson. That man is a legend here. He came to this town in 1953, a young man then. He said he came from Chicago. And do you know anything about his house?" Betty thought. "As I recall, that house was built in a very peculiar way. They used much more expensive materials than the other houses. And the construction was done very secretly. Even the construction workers came from out of town." Jason asked, his heart racing. "Did anything government-related happen in this town in the 1950s? Special projects?" Betty lowered her voice and moved closer. "Honey, it's not in the official records, but old people talk all the time. In the mid-1950s, sometimes very strange people would come to town. Always at night, always secretly. And they would always go to the Peterson house." "What kind of people?" "People who spoke with foreign accents. They looked very pale, very frightened. And after a few days, they would disappear." Jason was shocked. "How long did this go on?" "Until the early 1960s. Then Peterson lived a completely normal life. But the townspeople thought he was very mysterious. He never married. He never had any close friends." Jason left the library, his mind reeling. Was Peterson's house really a safe house? And what was behind that door in the wall? That evening, while Jason was having dinner with his family, he decided to broach the subject. Guys, I've learned some very strange things about Peterson. His mother, Linda, frowned. Jason, it's not right to pry into our neighbor's private life. Mom, listen to me. That house might have been used by the government as a safe house in the 1950s. For people escaping the Soviets. Tom laughed. Son, you've been watching too many spy movies. But Jason insisted. Dad, I'm serious. Librarian Betty told me that strange people used to come to Peterson's house at night back then. Jason, Linda said seriously. Those kinds of theories are very dangerous. It's not right to speculate about people. But Jason was determined. I just want to go down into that bunker one more time. I want to see what's behind that door. Tom shook his head. Absolutely not. Trespassing Peterson's house without permission is trespassing. Besides, he told you not to touch that door. Jason couldn't sleep that night. His curiosity was overwhelming. In the early morning hours, the day Peterson went to town, he made up his mind. He approached the outer hatch of the bunker from the backyard. The metal hatch was locked, but Jason had taken a lockpick from his father's construction equipment. After a few minutes, he managed to pick the lock. The bunker was dark inside. He turned on his phone flashlight and approached the strange wall. He could see it more clearly in the daylight. It was definitely a later wall, and there were fine lines around the edges. Jason examined the wall carefully. In the upper left corner, he noticed a small metal ring, almost invisible. He pulled on the ring, and surprisingly, a section of the wall slid inward. Holy crap, he muttered. Behind him, there was indeed a small room. Jason shone his phone light inside. The room was about 8 by 8 feet, but it held surprising things. The walls were hung with old photographs, black and white photos from the 1950s. People, families, but Jason didn't recognize any of them. In one corner was an old suitcase. In the other, old files. Jason opened the suitcase. Inside were old clothes, passports, and ID cards. The passports were from different countries, the Soviet Union, East Germany, Poland. But the photos on each were of different people. He examined the files. Not all of them were in English. Some appeared to be in Russian. But one file contained a letter in English. Harold, our new guest will arrive Thursday evening. Dr. Malkov, nuclear physicist. He carries very critical information. Maximum security is required. The files will be kept in the basement room. Agent Morrison. Jason's hand began to shake. This was real. The Peterson house had indeed been used as a safe house during the Cold War. There were other files as well, a list of defectors, operational codes, contact information. Jason began taking photos. Just then, he heard footsteps upstairs. Peterson had returned home. Shit, Jason muttered. He quickly put the files back in place, closed the suitcase, and left the secret room. He tried to close the wall, but just then Peterson was descending into the bunker. Jason, what are you doing here? Jason froze. Peterson held an old pistol in his hand. Mr. Peterson, I can explain. Explain? Peterson's voice was trembling. You're going to break the secret I've been guarding for 70 years in one day? Jason threw up his hands. Sir, please calm down. I won't tell anyone. Peterson narrowed his eyes. You saw that room, didn't you? Jason nodded. Yes, sir. The old man took a deep breath and lowered the pistol. Damn it. I knew this would happen someday. Peterson sat down in an old chair and pressed his hands to his face. Jason, sit down. I think it's time you learn the truth. Jason carefully sat down across from Peterson. In 1953, I was 23, just like you are now. I worked for the CIA, but not officially. Black operations. Operations the government could officially deny. Peterson looked at the secret room in the wall. During the Cold War, there were scientists, engineers, spies who escaped from the Soviets. It was necessary to bring these people safely to America, but taking them directly to Washington would be too risky. Did you use safe houses for that? Exactly. In the middle of Kansas, somewhere no one would suspect. Defectors would come here, stay for a while, get new identities, and then start their new lives. Jason asked curiously. How many people came here? Peterson thought for a long time. 23 people. From 1953 to 1962. Each one was a different story. Some brought nuclear secrets, some military technology, some just wanted their families and freedom. So what happened to them? Most of them successfully built new lives. Dr. Volkov became a professor at MIT. Engineer Petrov worked in the aerospace industry. But some? Peterson paused. What happened to some of them? Some were found by Soviet agents. In 1961, Maria Kozlova was hiding here. She had escaped from Leningrad and brought important documents. But one night, 3 men came. We never saw her again. Jason shuddered. Was she killed? I don't know. But she was probably taken back. You can imagine what awaited her in the Soviet Union. Peterson stood up and went to the secret room. He picked up one of the photographs. It was Maria. She was 28 years old and had 2 children. Her children had stayed in Moscow, and she was planning to bring them back. The photo showed a young woman, beautiful but anxious. How long have you been keeping this secret? Jason asked. 70 years, Jason. I've lived in this town for 70 years, lying to everyone. People think I'm strange, but they never learn the truth. So why is she still keeping it secret? The Cold War is over. Peterson smiled wryly. Because, Jason, some operations are so secret that the government will never acknowledge them. I never officially existed. What happened in this house never happened. Jason was beginning to grasp the gravity of the situation. Mr. Peterson, this is a very big deal. And that's why you won't tell anyone. Peterson's voice was serious and determined. The people in this town are ordinary, normal people. They don't need to know about such things. But this is historical information. People need to learn how the Cold War worked. Jason. Peterson put a hand on Jason's shoulder. I lived through that. This isn't a romantic story. People died, families were torn apart, lives were ruined. These secrets are better left buried. When Jason returned home, he was confused. Should he share this information with his family? Should he comply with Peterson's request? During dinner, his mother, Linda, noticed Jason's thoughtfulness. Honey, is everything all right? You've been very quiet today. Jason hesitated. Mom, what would you do if you learned something very important historically and were told not to tell anyone? Tom and Linda looked at each other. Depends, honey, Linda said. If the information could harm people, it should be kept secret. But if it's educational and useful, it can be shared. What about both? It's both important and potentially dangerous. Tom looked at her curiously. Jason, is this about Peterson? Jason nodded. Son, old people sometimes have a tendency to tell old stories. They're not always true. But Dad, what if it's true? Linda spoke seriously. Jason, if you learn something really important, you should tell the right people. Historians, authorities. That night, Jason continued his online research. He typed in, CIA safe houses 1950s Kansas. The results were few, but one academic article caught his attention. Dr. Robert Sterling, of the University of Kansas History Department, had done research on government operations in the Midwest during the Cold War. The article mentioned Rumored but unconfirmed safe house operations. Jason emailed Dr. Sterling. Dear Dr. Sterling, your article about Cold War operations in Kansas caught my attention. I may have information about a potential safe house operation in our town. Could we discuss this confidentially? The next morning, he received a reply. Dear Jason, very interested in your information. This research has been ongoing for years. Can we meet this week? I can come to your town. Jason went to Peterson's house. The old man was mowing the lawn in the backyard. Mr. Peterson, I talked to a historian. Dr. Sterling is researching the Cold War period. Peterson stopped and looked at Jason. What did you tell him? I haven't gone into any detail yet. But maybe it's time to document this story. Peterson thought for a long time. Jason, I'm 93. Maybe you're right. Maybe these stories shouldn't be lost. But only for historical purposes. No one's identity will be compromised. Peterson nodded. Is Dr. Sterling trustworthy? He's a university professor. He does academic research. Okay. He'll come this Saturday. But Jason, there's one condition. What? If this story is to be told, let it be told accurately. Not romanticized like a Hollywood movie. The real Cold War wasn't like this. On Saturday, Dr. Sterling arrived. He was a serious-looking academic in his 50s. Peterson showed him the secret room and explained the files. Mr. Peterson, this is an incredible find, Dr. Sterling said. There's very little documented evidence for these kinds of operations, because they weren't supposed to be documented at all, Peterson said. Dr. Sterling examined the photographs. Is there any information on some of these people? Dr. Volkov was a professor at MIT and died in 1987. I never learned what happened to Maria Kozlova. Engineer Petrov worked at Boeing and retired in 1999. So how did the operation end? Peterson took a deep breath. We had a very close call in 1962. Soviet agents were in town, investigating. The agency warned me, and we shut down the operation. This room has been sealed ever since. Dr. Sterling was taking notes. Mr. Peterson, can I use this information in an academic article? Of course, the names and specific locations will remain confidential. Peterson looked at Jason. Jason, what do you think? Jason considered. I think this is an important part of Cold War history. People need to know how this period happened. But Mr. Peterson's safety is also important. Sir, Dr. Sterling said, you are one of the few witnesses still alive. If these stories aren't recorded, they will be lost forever. Peterson was silent for a long time. Then he spoke. Okay, but I have one condition. When this story is told, it must tell not only about the successful escapes, but also about the failed attempts. It must also tell what happened to people like Maria Kozlova. That's a very important point, Dr. Sterling said. The Cold War was not a romantic period. Real people suffered real consequences. 3 months passed. Dr. Sterling published his article, Hidden Networks, Civilian Safe Houses in Cold War America. The article generated considerable interest in academic circles. Peterson showed Jason the article. Good work, he said. Names are confidential, locations are confidential, but the story is well told. Jason was reading the article. Mr. Peterson, I'm curious about something. You carried this secret for all those years. Didn't you regret it? Peterson smiled. Jason, I know I saved those people's lives. Dr. Volkov lived a free life in America, advancing science. That's enough. What about people like Maria Kozlova? Peterson's face tightened. I feel sorry for them. But Jason, there are no perfect solutions in wartime. There are only best efforts. That evening, while Jason was having dinner with his family, he shared the topic. Guys, the story of Peterson and Dr. Sterling was published in an academic journal. Linda looked at him with interest. Really? What kind of story? There were undercover operations in this town during the Cold War. Peterson was a safe house supervisor. Tom was surprised. Holy crap! Right next door? Dad, this was serious. People's lives were at risk. Linda was thoughtful. We've lived with our neighbor for all these years. We never knew he had a history like this. That shows how disciplined Peterson is, Jason said. He didn't tell anyone for 70 years. Tom nodded. Respect. These kinds of operations aren't easy.